Welcome to Hora, New Zealand. Indian Weekender was among the first voices in New Zealand to champion a Pacific-wide bubble. As early as April 29, we wrote, the Pacific Islands have succeeded by and large in keeping out COVID-19. There is no reason why we shouldn't be included in an Oceania-wide bubble with New Zealand and Australia. It could be a win-win for all concerned on several fronts. Our call was then echoed by a number of people and institutions in New Zealand and around the Pacific, including former New Zealand Prime Minister Helen Clark, the New Zealand-Fiji Business Council, the Fiji Trade and Investment Commission, and Fiji Prime Minister Frank Bainimarama, to name only a few. At the forefront of this initiative today is the New Zealand-Fiji Business Council and its chairman, Chander Sen, with whom we will be conversing today. Chander is an engineer born and raised in Fiji. His career of more than 30 years has seen him employed in Fiji by the Fiji Sugar Corporation and Fiji Electricity Authority. Since moving to New Zealand, he worked for leading engineering companies, and in 2010, he started Pacific Engineering Projects Limited, a New Zealand headquartered design and build engineering company working across the Pacific, including Fiji. He is the current president of the New Zealand-Fiji Business Council. Chander has been relentless in following up with all concerned in trying to turn a Pacific bubble, which the Fiji Prime Minister recently termed Bula Bubble, into reality. Join me in my conversation with Chander today on when, and if at all, the Bula Bubble is likely to happen. Hi, Chander, and welcome to Kia Hora, New Zealand.
Kia ora.
We were talking about the Bula Bubble, which Fiji has, announced some time back, just a few days back. And there's been a little bit of confusion about what it is and how New Zealand is responding to it. It seems to be, that there are conflicting interests or conflicting opinions within New Zealand and also Fiji. And there seem to be, everything looks a little bit hazy. Now, since you are the chairman of the New Zealand-Fiji Business Council, and you already had a few interactions with both governments and officials in both countries, maybe you can bring us and our viewers up to speed about what's happening?
Thanks, Dev. That's one question that got brought up in our networking session yesterday. And so this morning, I wrote to the Minister for Tourism in Fiji and his PS, and they responded very quickly with a clarification. And the clarification that the Business Council had sought was, does a intending person or a person intending to travel have to actually quarantine in New Zealand for 14 days, then have a clearance within 48 hours of traveling before traveling to Fiji, or you just needed a clean or clear test in 48 hours before traveling? It would appear there is 14 days quarantine here, a test, then go to Fiji, and of course you will be put in your bubble, and this is for tourists. And then when you come back, we all know what the stance of the New Zealand government is. They'll put you in quarantine for 14 days as well. So for business persons, that's actually a deterrent. And we have written this morning to the minister and the PS, and they have responded with some clarifications. And one of the clarifications was that they're working through this now to fine tune it, so polishing it off. But what I would like to say, Dev, is that I give full credit to the Fijian government for actually coming out with a way to make something happen. They have not just sat back and waited for a particular bubble to come in place as a prerequisite before their bubble is open. So they are actually proactive. They have come up with something. Sure, like any thing to do with COVID-19, there will be some teething problems. We've had our own share of those here in New Zealand, and they're working through that. And so I haven't gone through the full clarification email that has come from PS Shaheen this morning, and he sent me the link where we can get the answers to those questions. But on the face of it, yeah, 14 days here, plus a test within 48 hours of traveling. And then, of course, when we come back to New Zealand, we'll have to 14 days here. Other than credit to the government for starting something, looking for a way to make travel happen rather than just simply shutting the borders down. I think a bit of work is required in polishing it off. And I'm hoping that the New Zealand government will support the Fijian government to bring it to pass and not forever be bound in this thing that they will first open the Australia-New Zealand travel bubble before they look to the Pacific.
What's been the response from the New Zealand government to the Bula Bubble?
So, as you may know, the council approached the New Zealand government. We wrote to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Right Honourable Winston Peters, early in May, and putting to him our basis for opening the Fiji-New Zealand bubble. As being the New Zealand-Fiji Business Council, our focus has been the New Zealand-Fiji bubble, and it's not hard to work out why. Fiji is one of New Zealand's top 20 trading partners in goods and services. And we all know that some of New Zealand's trading partners, other trading partners, have difficulties with COVID. And so rather than waiting for those to materialize, we should actually nurture what is one of our top 20 trading partners. So we went to the government and sought from them some concession to allow Fijians to travel here because they are COVID-free. They have been COVID-free for more than 2 months. At the time we wrote, they were more than a month COVID-free. They have a World Health Organization accredited testing laboratory, the only ones in the Pacific, other than, of course, Australia and New Zealand, to have that. So they had all the things. They got all the ticks, I guess, if you want to say it that way. And at the time we had approached our government, New Zealand was in the same position. They had eliminated COVID for that duration. So we thought, what's the difficulty traveling between two COVID-free countries and two countries which have a very strong relationship going back many years, you know? New Zealand's second ever double tax agreement was with Fiji. So our ties are much longer and stronger than many other many other countries. So we went to the government, and for a month, we copied it to Minister David Parker as well. His office gave us an acknowledgement. And then for a month, we did not hear anything from our government. So we went to the media. And on the day we went to the media, we got an email from the Minister of Foreign Affairs office, Right Honourable Winston Peters' office. And he mentioned that Honourable David Parker and Honourable Ayaz Sayed Qayyum have been in dialogue on this very subject. So that was very heartening. And on that evening, I spoke to Honourable Ayaz Sayed Qayyum just to give him our support and to suggest to him that if New Zealand is having difficulty reopening, and by the time I spoke to the Fijian AG, in his capacity as Minister of Economy, of course, it was 9 p.m. at night, and we've had 2 cases in New Zealand already. So both countries being COVID-free and let us travel freely no longer applied. Although, Honourable Ayaz Sayed Qayyum was very positive in his outlook about New Zealand, in that New Zealand would manage its issues very quickly and be back to where it was not long ago. And I suggested to the minister that maybe they should allow us to travel, and traveling up with a doctor's clearance. I did put that to them, that we should have a doctor's clearance, and within 3 days of traveling, because 48 hours becomes a bit impractical, a bit hard. It's not impossible, it's a bit hard. So he said that there will be announcements made, and they'll take on board the submissions we made as part of the Business Council. And lo and behold, we had the announcement made. At least they cleared one thing. Up till then, only Fiji citizens could travel to Fiji. At least they came out with an announcement and cleared that others can now travel. So we had a positive response from the Fijian government, in that they have actually now allowed non-citizens to travel. The means, the rules around it, obviously are still being worked through. In terms of the New Zealand government, from the government, we have not had any direct advice as to what their intention is regarding the New Zealand-Fiji bubble. But we put that to the New Zealand High Commissioner to Fiji yesterday during our Zoom webinar. And of course, the High Commissioner reiterated what we have been hearing from the Prime Minister here, which is to do Australia, New Zealand bubble first and then look to the Pacific. I think many people were heartened with what Right Honourable Winston Peters had to say on Friday on national TV. And in his comments, I don't know if you saw the news, but I saw it. And when the question was put to him, when is it expected? When does he see this happening? He said weeks. And then he went on to say, I think, you'll have to check the news from Friday, but I'm pretty sure he went on to say then the Australia-New Zealand bubble can be looked at end of July, August, is the word he said. However, we heard the High Commissioner yesterday, and he actually stated the government's position, of course, he's the government representative, where the desire to have Australia-New Zealand border done first is still very much the government's agenda. Now, that is ludicrous. I spoke to members during networking session yesterday. They just cannot see the logic in it. You know, we have membership that spans from individual sole traders to New Zealand largest engineering companies, the world's largest dairy company, you know, companies listed on NASDAQ. We have the whole range of companies that do business with Fiji from New Zealand, and everyone could not see the logic of having a prerequisite between Australia and New Zealand. Everybody respects the ANZAC relationship that New Zealand has with Australia, but right now they are not ready. So we need to respect the fact that Australia is not ready, because if you hear what the Australian Foreign Affairs Minister has said, he said no travel until 2021. So on the back of that, I'm, you know, myself and my colleagues at the Business Council are at an absolute loss to explain our government's position. And in fact, it's very confusing when we hear the Deputy Prime Minister, you know, the second most important person of seniority in the government, saying one thing, and then just yesterday, an official from his ministry, you know, who was actually putting down the government's position is totally different. So a lot of dissatisfaction, firstly, that we are not expediting what should be done yesterday, which is open up the New Zealand-Fiji border. Because remember, other than business, Dev, New Zealand must have a responsibility to the citizens of Fiji. I was speaking to someone earlier today, and someone from Nandi had visited them. And there's talk of ladies selling their Mangal Sutra. Now, I'm not sure what the Mangal Sutra is called in English, but it's a necklace that the husband gives his wife as part of consummating the marriage. It's a very sacred thing. But ladies are selling jewelry like that to make ends meet. And Nandi is a tourist town. You know, Nandi is based around tourists. Of course, there's sugar industry in the West as well. But a lot of people work at the airport, work in the hotels, and there are a lot of people that support these industries. And there's a lot of government employees there as well, customs officers, immigration officers, police people, all of these people. And so Nandi is suffering big time. And, you know, it's a COVID-free country. And we are pretty COVID-free as well, because all our COVID cases, other than the two sisters that left without being tested, until now, actually in the second wave, are within quarantined or isolated locations, so not spreading to the public. So I don't think the COVID-free situation in New Zealand has changed dramatically. Certainly not changed enough to impact breaking the New Zealand-Fiji bubble. And I'm you know, very hopeful that the governments both listen. I mean, Fiji on its part also has to do its side of the bargain, and it cannot actually continue with 14 days of quarantine for people arriving from here to there. You know, a medical clearance from New Zealand should be sufficient for them to let the person or persons go and enjoy their holiday. And okay, I don't think there's a big issue if they are going to have these their Bula lanes. So what they are thinking of doing is sending people from like-minded countries, like-minded locations into a like-minded, similar type of environment. So it's managed, and I don't think that's a big issue. You know, people want to go and stay at the Hilton. Well, I'm sure there'll be hundreds of Kiwis who want to go and do that because the rates are very attractive. Ditto for Sheraton, and ditto for the other hotels that are on Denrau, for example, or the outer islands. So I think once you have a clearance from the doctor, you should be allowed to go. And New Zealand needs to play its side of the bargain. Is okay when persons are returning from Fiji, they have to be verified that they haven't come to Fiji from somewhere else and using Fiji as a stopover to get into New Zealand. Very, very easy to do that through passport checks. And then do a test at the airport. And if the symptoms are not right, then only you are asked to go to quarantine. But if the symptoms are okay, you get all the ticks, you should be allowed to go back to your home. And the reality of the situation now there is that COVID is here, it's going to die its natural death. It's starting to mutate anyway. If you look at what's happening in Italy, 80, 90-year-old patients in the past used to come, they would not survive. Now they are there, in 2-3 hours, they're up sitting in their beds, and after some time they go home. So I think we can't have any sort of common sense prevailing if we do not start the travel bubble. And New Zealand and everyone in Fiji appreciates that, contributes $20 million to Fiji in aid, which is a significant amount of money. But on the other hand, the tourism industry is about 2 billion in Fiji. And $500 million of that, so a full quota of that 2 billion is New Zealanders.
Yeah. Chander, do you think that the New Zealand government is a little bit risk-averse now because they don't want to rock the boat when they are so close to the election? They don't know how, to probably, if things go out of hand in Fiji or anything untoward happens, it's something which is not required. That sort of distraction is not required for the government. Do you think something like that is at play as well?
I mean, the Business Council is apolitical, but if you want my personal view, this has been made into a political decision. Absolutely.
So how is the council planning to represent to the government once again? Or you're just going to,
We definitely will not stay lying down because we feel it's our responsibility to our members. And I think it's our responsibility as citizens of New Zealand to continue to encourage the government with facts and figures and request that they reconsider some of the decisions they have taken. And I think, politics is without a doubt playing a part in it. And it being election year and just literally weeks away, it would be foolish for us, naive for us to think that that is totally a mutually exclusive event. It's no longer a mutually exclusive event. I think it's the management of COVID to a large degree can be correlated to the election outcomes or the, what people are after. But, we will not stop. And it's very rare for us to go to the media with any of our things, whether it's a good thing or a complaint. But this time around we did. So I guess it's a message that we will not stop until the right thing is done. And the right thing is to allow travel between two COVID-free countries. By all means, have the necessary smart checks. Yes, and if we are going with a medical clearance that we are COVID-free, then really I think the concept of quarantine has to go. I mean, that to me and the Business Council, the concept of breaking the bubble means eliminating the need for quarantining either way. So to answer your question, no, the Business Council has not stopped. It has really started, listening to what we've been hearing and seeing what's going on. And we have COVID-free countries. We have our top 20 or one of our top 20 business partners suffering at the moment, literally suffering, and you heard the example I gave you about women selling their jewelry to feed and make ends meet. We as a country cannot do nothing and just wait and look and see our neighbors, our very close neighbors, our close business neighbors. And, we have so many persons of Fijian extract in New Zealand. We can't wait, we just cannot hope for the best and do nothing. So now the Business Council is very committed. We wanted to wait and hear what the High Commissioner had to say yesterday before we go out with our next submission to the government. And I think we have no qualms now. I think the council is fairly resigned to the fact that there's no harm going to the media and keeping the public informed as well. And, we thank organizations such as yours for these opportunities,
So you think this will go ahead at all?
That is definitely our objective.
You see it happening anytime soon?
I don't see it happening in June. It could happen later in July. Could happen later in July. You know, the Business Council has been in existence for more than 30 years and has done a lot of good work, and that's been acknowledged by prime ministers of both countries. As late as last year, the Deputy Prime Minister here acknowledged our work and what we do. You know, and Business Council has been very active in actually monitoring the trading relationship. So, you know, we are now over 1 billion, and we, the Business Council, no other entity, not NZT, not the Trade Ministry, Business Council set a target of 2 billion by 2025. And, you know, we have to, that is an achievable target. And to do that, we got to keep moving. Sitting here is not going to make that happen for New Zealand and for Fiji. So, I mean, we're going to push for it, Dev, and we're not silly about it. But right now, we do not see the logic in the reason that first we have to do Australia-New Zealand bubble before we consider Pacific. It just does not have any logic around it, other than it being political. Now, we hear that Australia is our long trading partner. We have a lot of history together. We fought battles together. We got the Anzac spirit. But we do fight each other. When it comes to rugby, we give them a hiding. So I'm sure they know there'll be times when we have to make our own decisions for the best outcomes. And seeing Australia has come out and said that people can't be traveling here till 2021, I think our government needs to look at that as well.
Exactly. Yep. Well, thank you very much for coming on Kya Hora New Zealand, Chander, and wish you all the very best, and the Business Council as well, to influence both governments to, you know, get going with the Bula Bubble, and follow that up with the Pacific as well.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.